go ahead and get started. My name is Jordan Foreman.
My name is Amber Barnes.
And we are so excited to welcome you to the first annual Black and STEM celebration here at Florida Tech. It's the first time we've ever done this, and me and Amethyst are going to be your moderators for this Q&A portion of the event.
A little bit about us. I am a senior undergrad, also in astrophysics, where my areas of interest are exoplanets and galactic evolution, and also universal evolution.
Yeah, and people want me. I'm a senior and undergrad here at Florida Tech. I'm majoring in astrophysics and astronomy. I'm an intern at Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm also an aspiring astronaut, and I'm studying supermassive black holes and active black nuclei.
I don't know what you just said.
And for the lineup, we have a lineup of amazing Black STEM professionals and scientists here. So we have Dr. Winston Scott, who is a retired NASA astronaut and a pilot. We have Dr. Michael King here, who is a computer engineer and a associate professor here at Florida Tech. And then next we have Miss Tracy Drain, who is a flight systems engineer at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And Dr. Ronald Jr., who is a theoretical astrophysicist at Goddard Space Flight Center, and one of my colleagues. And then we have Miss Ashley Walker, who is a PhD student at Howard University. She's also the founder of Black in Astro, co-founder of Black in STEM, or Black in Chemistry, and then that's all. Okay. The lineup. And we'll just go ahead and get started. We have a list of questions that we've kind of prepared already. And, we're going to start off with just quick introductions, just your name, profession, interests, and where you work, fun little hobby maybe. Fun little hobby, fun facts. Winston Scott, you go first.
Okay, good. I'm Winston Scott. And first of all, congratulations or thank you to your organization for putting this event on. It's a good one. And so I congratulate you and thank you for the opportunity to participate. My background is naval aviation. I spent 27 years on active duty in the United States Navy as a naval aviator. I've flown over 7,000 hours and 25 more different airplanes. My main airplane in the Navy was the F-14 Tomcat. If you're not familiar with that one, that's okay, because you probably are familiar with the movie Top Gun. Everybody is. The actor did it in the movies, pretended that's the one I flew for real in the Navy. But I flew 2 space shuttle missions with NASA as an astronaut. 9 days on Endeavour, then 16 days on Columbia. And since leaving active duty, I've done a number of things. Most recently, I retired from Florida Tech. I spent 13 years here. I was Dean of the College of Aeronautics and Professor of Aeronautics and Professor of Music, and then Senior Vice President to the President of Florida Tech. I just recently retired from Florida Tech.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Dr. King, you go next.
Yeah, I am Michael King. I'm a professor here at Florida Tech. And yes, thank you for the invitation as well for this esteemed event. I spent, after getting my PhD at North Carolina State University, I spent 14 years in government. All of which were with the intelligence community. So I ran science and technology programs for the CIA, the National Security Agency, as well as IARPA, before joining Florida Tech as a professor here at the Department of Computer Engineering and Sciences. My specialty in research is in the area of biometrics, and that is how do you identify people on the basis of anatomical or behavioral signatures that they need.
Awesome. It's really great. Thank you so much. So Miss Tracy, you go next.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I hope you can hear me okay through this thing. Sorry that I can't be there physically, but I'm over in California at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I studied mechanical engineering for my undergrad and my graduate degree, my master's degree, University of Kentucky and then Georgia Tech. I've been working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for the last 20 years now as a systems engineer. So as I was explaining to one young lady in the audience, that's where we're trying to make spacecraft work. They're very complicated. You have people who focus on telecom and thermal and power and attitude control and all the various parts. Systems engineers need to know something about all of those things to make sure that we are designing the spacecraft to work together as a whole and go off and accomplish the mission goals. So we've worked to make sure we're designing it properly, we're testing it at the system level, and then once we launch them to go visit different places in the solar system, something always goes wrong. We're the people at the forefront of trying to work with a team of people to figure out what happened, why did that happen, what can we do about it, and keep the mission on track to get the scientists back their data so that they can go and learn new things about our solar system and points beyond.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Gamble, you can go next.
Afternoon, everybody. So I'm Dr. Gamble. So my background is in theoretical astrophysics. I went to North Carolina A&T State University. I think I heard that before from someone. There we go, Aggie Pride. I got my bachelor's there in physics. I did a master's in high temperature superconductivity there. And my PhD at A&T as well in theoretical astrophysics. So I got all 3 degrees at A&T. I'm Aggie born and bred. My dissertation work was in nonlinear gravitational wave theory and black hole binary mergers. And so now at NASA Goddard, where I work, I am developing a research program centered around black hole physics and active galactic nuclei. So I'm looking at the relativistic jet formations from blazars and radiolab quasars and figuring out, well, what are the mechanisms that's going on there? What can we observe? What can we figure out? And so that is what I do. So I am also the Cosmic Origins program scientist as well, which is a new title I got within the last month. So I am spread over NASA nationwide, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Ms. Ashley Walker, you can go next.
What Ron didn't say is that he's also my vice president for Black and Astro.
I'm sorry.
Leading with that, I am the founder of Black and Astro, where we celebrate Blackness around the world within the space field, no matter whether you're an astronaut, an astronomer, you are a test flight engineer, you do aviation. We celebrate everyone that is in the space sector. I'm also a co-founder of Black and Chem, where we do basically the same thing, but for chemists, and also for Black and also a co-founder of Black and Physics. I got my bachelor's in chemistry from Chicago State University. I am here in Chicago currently. Throughout my entire undergrad, I studied astrochemistry, which is where we look at the chemical composition in planets and stars. I interned at Johns Hopkins University, NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and Harvard University, where all 3 times I studied either planet formation or planetary atmospheres. And I'm a current PhD student at Howard University in the graduate program of atmospheric sciences, where I study the ice giants Neptune and Uranus, and we want to understand them a little bit better. And a hobby, I guess, because I think that was one of the questions. I am a professional roller skater.
Gosh, that's so cool. I also love roller skating. That's great.
I like rollerblading.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get to our first question. We'll just go in the same order. So what made you want to get involved in STEM? Scott, you go first.
Well, I got involved in STEM relatively late. I didn't get into STEM until I was in college. I actually went to undergraduate school to study music. I was a very, very good musician, and that's how I got to college. When I was growing up, I'm probably the oldest one in the room and the oldest person on the Zoom. We didn't have programs in those days to introduce minorities to engineering. And my schools were segregated up through 9th grade. That's I think segregation was way back. You read about it in history books. It wasn't all that far back. So anyway, I was always a student as a young kid who was interested in technical things. I played with batteries and light bulbs and motors, but I didn't know what engineering was.
Yeah.
I was a good musician, went to school to study music, discovered engineering, and started taking engineering courses, math and science engineering, as an undergraduate in college. So I was doing a double major. In those days, I'll try not to be too long, you could pay one tuition fee and take as many hours as you wanted. Nowadays, you pay by the hour. Then you could take as many hours as you wanted. I was thinking 21 hours because I was taking calculus and physics in addition to my music. So anyway, what made me want to get involved in STEM is a natural love for science and technology, even as a little kid. And I got into it relatively late, but obviously I'm glad that I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Question, was it boring in space?
No, it wasn't boring. I think we made questions later. I
Yeah,
don't
we'll
wanna
do
the-
questions of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk some more later.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I can't imagine taking 21 credits at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. King?
Yeah, I think it was probably when I was in like middle school, I had a algebra teacher that was saying, you know, that I should go into engineering, not really knowing what engineers really did. But so I ended up matriculating and getting to college, majoring in electrical engineering. And during that time, I got introduced to a professor who just happened to be my advisor. And he started talking to me about, you know, ways to make these computers kind of behave like brains, you know, the way we learn as people, and neural networks. And so as a second semester freshman, I started working in this research lab. I was always in the dean's office looking for more money to pay for tuition. I mean, we didn't have it. Well, I won't say we had any, but we didn't have much for funds to go to school. And so I kept on knocking on the dean's door. And eventually he said, look, you know, you need to go talk to your advisor. He just got some research dollars and tell him to pay you. And so I did. And so I was a second semester freshman when I started doing research for him. And I did research for him from the second semester freshman year all the way through the PhD. And so yeah, I had very minimal student loan debt, probably just the first semester, because it was actually taken care of. And so yeah, it was, you know, I kind of think when you get to these technical areas, is, you know, you kind of fall in love with those things that you learn how to do best and that you can actually talk about.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so neural networks, artificial neural net theory and methodology is kind of what I learned first. And what I've kind of stuck with throughout my career.
That's amazing. Congrats on not having tons of student loans. Oh my gosh. All right, Ms. Jane, you can go next.
Yep. And for me, I was interested in a whole bunch of things as a little kid. I used to dig up my grandmother's backyard. For a while, I thought I'd be an archaeologist. I really loved airplanes. My mom is going to die when she knows I was on the panel with a person who flew F-14s. That's her very favorite fighter plane. And she introduced me and my brother to science fiction. We like to watch Star Trek and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and all of that stuff. And when I was trying to decide what I wanted to study later on, even though no one in my family had gone to college before, I was at a high school where the teachers just talked about college all the time. So I just assumed that I would go. If I knew then what I know now, I probably would have chosen to study astronomy. But back then, I'm old enough, I'm still not as old as you gentlemen, but old enough that there was no internet. And I literally had no idea like what you could do with an astronomy degree, aside from be a professor, like who would pay me to go study the stars just because I think it's cool. So that's why I chose engineering. And I actually chose mechanical engineering instead of aerospace because all I knew about the aerospace industry is that it had its ups and downs. And what if I can't get a job? At least if I study mechanical, maybe I can build cars or refrigerators. But I was fortunate when I went to undergrad at University of Kentucky to land an internship at the NASA Langley Research Center. And that was my first kind of getting my foot in the door of the NASA family. And ultimately, after finishing my undergrad in mechanical engineering, doing my graduate degree at Georgia Tech in mechanical engineering, bumped into some Jet Propulsion Lab recruiters from NASA JPL and learned that they were the ones who landed the little rover on Mars. And after that, I was done. Like, please hire me. Let me talk to anybody. Please, please, please. And I've been working there ever since.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Dr. Gamble?
Yeah, so I guess I have always been interested in science. I guess it started at a very early age. I might have been 4 or 5. And I was always interested in anything space. So my mom, just like you, Tracy, my mom she watched science fiction. I watched Star Trek. I watched all of them, Wrath of Khan and First Contact, all of them as a child. And, it was just, I got into science because I had a lot of questions that were unanswered. And that's what really got me into astrophysics, astronomy, physics, the theory. There was a mystery about the science that I wanted to figure out. That's how I got into the science. And I knew I was going to go into the science because I would ask my mom questions. Why does the sun have fire? And, well, how does gravity work? And how many stars are there? And she couldn't answer them. And I thought she was the smartest person alive then. So, any 8-year-old thinks, yeah, your mom's the smartest person alive. If she can't answer them, then, oh my gosh, there must be something out there. And so that's what sparked the interest. What kept me in the science was part of the question of like representation. Growing up, I did not see this growing up. I didn't see anybody who looked like me, whether they be Black or Latino. I'm Afro-Latino, so I saw no one who looked like me, talked like me, came from where I came from, similar experiences, who were doing what I wanted to get into. So into physics and astronomy and studying black holes. I had to figure out on my own that you could get a job, and this was about in high school, you could get a job that pays fairly well, just deriving math and science so that someone else can go out and test it for you. That's theoretical physics. And so once I figured that out, I said, okay, well, I want to be a theoretical physicist. And then I figured out how long I had to stay in school to do that, which was literally the rest of my life, almost. It's only 10 years, but it felt like forever. And it just, in college, everything, the floodgates of knowledge opened. I felt like after each class, I had more and more questions. Even though I got some answers, I had more and more questions, and the questions became more detailed and more detailed and more detailed. Up until now, if I have questions like that, well, I can take the time to figure it out now because I know how to answer these things. I just need time. And so that's what really got me interested in the sciences. That's what kept me here. And then, trying to reach back to, the boy who was in my shoes as well. Okay, well, there's someone else out there who's probably thinking the same things as we are with the same struggles. So I have to be successful now so that they can see you can do this. So that's the last reason why I'm in the sciences. Because somebody has to do it.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely feel like representation is everything for sure. Ms. Walker.
So mine was a little bit different. Y'all, please don't laugh, even though I laugh at myself at this. So I wanted my parents to buy me a star out of the sky. And so I was just like, y'all just gonna buy me the star. And they were just like, yeah, actually, that's not how it works. I was about 5. And they was like, that's not how it works. So because I kept telling them they have to buy me a star out of the sky, and then I'm gonna be a moon, they were like, all right, girl, we're gonna buy you a telescope. And my uncle bought me a telescope. But I did stray away from science for a very long time because I thought I was going to be Beyonce's choreographer. I was very serious about this, y'all. So I wanted to be Beyonce's choreographer, and that's what I wanted to do. But obviously it didn't work out that way. And I initially was not interested in astronomy again, because my aunts, they took me to the planetarium and here in Chicago, which is America's first planetarium. So I would go there. I'm not a tall person, so I'm very little. So I would go, they used to have this exhibit where you could go and weigh your body on each scale. It was basically telling you what would you weigh on different planets. And so, which was very fascinating to me, which made me gravitate towards planetary science initially. But after that, I was like, okay, well, I want to be Beyonce's choreographer. That's fine. I'll be okay. I'll make money. That'll be fine. It did not work out that way. It didn't work out that way at all. But however, I did find a pathway through forensic chemistry, which is how I ended up with a chemistry degree because I wanted to do forensics. And then I landed upon someone who thought it would be cool. I thought it would be cool to work at NASA, but I, as an intern, but I didn't seriously think that I would go on that path of doing Astro-chem, and that's what led me there.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Beyonce's choreographer. That's iconic. Thank you so much. All right, so our next question is.
So who in Black history would you say is your biggest influence, if you have?
Same order?
Yeah, same order,
Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, I thought about that question, and when I was growing up, when I was little in elementary school, we would read these biographies, but there were no biographies about like, the biographies that I read that inspired me were Samuel Morse, who invented the telegraph, and Eli Whitney with the cotton gin, and Henry Ford, and the Wright brothers, and so on. When I was a little kid, there weren't any blacks in science and technology that inspired me. But I can remember the early Mercury program. I was in early elementary school when they picked the first 7 astronauts. I remember us reading about them in school. And I admired those people. I admired John Glenn and Alan Shepard, and then later on Neil Armstrong, and so on. As an adult, now I'm aware of the contributions that African Americans have made to science and technology. I still think it's not as publicized as it should be. We need to have more writing and publications about people in science and technology, engineering, and math. So there's a dearth there. But the people that inspire me were not African Americans. And that's an important point to make, though, even though we're here to celebrate and to uplift Blacks in STEM, we want to be sure that we interact with and we are inspired by everybody in STEM. It doesn't matter if it's men, women, Jewish, Hispanic, Black, I don't care. Everybody in STEM can inspire everybody else. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, look, in terms of, there are a number of different folks that play a role in terms of motivating, not necessarily in the STEM area, but maybe because so many people say I look like him or had some resemblance to Martin. I'd say he's probably one of the biggest influences in terms of history, but the biggest thing about him is not necessarily the things that many people would think about. I do think about the things he did peacefully, and even though folks made a concerted effort to silence him, now you actually see him on one of the most popular landmarks there is in the world, and you actually hear from him more often than you probably look at it if you have been left alone to live with this natural life. So that was one of the biggest motivators. But in some ways, it's the biggest inspiration is looking at all the things that were accomplished in a very short period of time. So if you look at not even making the 40-year mark, yet finding something that they're passionate about and standing up for it. That was perhaps the biggest motivation. And it makes it.
I know, yeah. There's something crawling around.
I'm still with it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I have to say, I thought about this question a lot too. And one of the things that my brain was crystallizing around is, why is it that I don't have a list of people who immediately come to my mind, right? I was one of those kids, even though there was integration by the time I went in school, it was early enough, or it just took long enough, whatever, that I, for the longest time, was one of the only Black kids in my class. And yes, there was Black History Month, and they taught us about the same, like 6 people every year, as if there was nobody else. And it was only when I was an adult that I really recognized that I had kind of internalized this unconscious message that if they don't teach you about it in detail at school, it's not important. We didn't learn about very much Black history in school, must not be important, right? Kind of a horrifying message to realize I had taken in as a kid. And it makes me wonder how many people out there have the same thing. It was only maybe 10 years ago or so that I even started recognizing that I was missing something and trying to go off and learn about Black history on my own, and stumbled across just an incredible, really inspiring number of people in all areas that I just didn't know about. And so someone mentioned earlier that representation is important. It totally is. There's just this whole unwritten history. I was very fortunate, like the rest of the world, to learn about Katherine Johnson and the ladies from the whole Hidden Figure story. It was shocking to me that I had actually interned at NASA Langley for 4 different rotations, never heard a single peep about these ladies and their contribution until 20 years after I had been there in 2016. And so there are people that I can think of now who I find very inspiring that I just didn't know about when I was growing up. I mean, the only person that I saw on TV who looked like me doing something that I wish I could do was Geordie LaForge, Star Trek engineer, right? I know, yes, Geordie, which is probably one of the tiny reasons too why I decided to go down this path.
Yeah. Dr. Gamble?
So I kind of struggled with this one until I realized I have a kind of like a new inspiration, or a newly found inspiration, I should say. So I too, growing up, I knew of the Lewis Latimers, the Garrett Morris, and the Benjamin Bannekers, but it was a finite list, and none of them kind of overlapped with what I was interested in, which was physics and theoretical physics and things like gravity and black holes. And so for a while, I didn't really see I saw some figures from Black history, but I didn't see one that really spoke to me, that I could build a personal, inspirational connection to, until I stumbled across, and Ash is going to get a kick out of this too, one person that is really inspiring right now. And she's doing research in the same field as I am. She does theoretical physics. She's a Black woman. She almost won the Nobel Prize. She should have won it. And that's Reva K. Williams at University of Toledo right now. She's my unsung hero. So in theoretical physics, especially theoretical astrophysics, there's not a lot of us. There's maybe 5. I've met 5 in my career as a whole. So yeah, you can see how little a number there actually are within one of the hardest areas of astronomy, astrophysics, the theoretical side, the pure mathematical side. But Reva K. Williams is my hero. She's done a lot to push the field forward and hasn't gotten the deserved recognition. So any chance I'm actually going to reach out to her to see if she wants to collaborate on research. So if she's listening to this at some point, my email's going to be in the chat or somewhere. Find me. But yes, Reva K. Williams is my Black history hero, my inspiration right now.
I love that. Yeah. Wow. Oh, right, Ms. Walker.
So for me, it's very similar to what everyone else said, but I also saw another fellow Chicagoan who was the first Black woman astronaut. Of course, y'all know who I'm about to say, Dr. Mae Jemison. And so I was really, really inspired by her as a kid growing up, but also piggybacking off of Dr. Ron Gamble, then you learn about the repeated names, right? And so every year what I do is I put new people out. I was like, all right, you guys need to know about these astronomers here. And you can, if you all have social media and stuff like that, you can follow me on Twitter and you can see the list of Black history astronomers that I highlight every year. And every year they're either updated or new people coming in, because we'll find out. But like in the field of astronomy, currently there's only 23 Black women with PhDs in astronomy in the US. And so for me, it's very hard. And I'm an astrochemist. And currently there's only 4 with PhD in astrochemistry in the world. So it's like, oh, okay. So I'm not gonna just stretch it here to the US. I'm gonna go outside. There are currently for me, when I got older, I found out about Dr. Delphine Muvando, who was the first Black woman astrochemist in the world in 2002. And then here in the US, we just got our first Dr. Jamila Pegues, who was also the first at Harvard to receive a PhD in astronomy, who was also a dear friend of mine. And then there's also Dr. Reva K. Williams, who I had a chance to chat with her, and it was an amazing chat. And then obviously Dr. Ron Gamble and my team at Black and Astro, and also I feel like I'm forgetting someone. Also, I'm sorry, Dr. Lene Quick and Dr. Nia Amara, who are my mentors. And so these people have, and Dr. Jarita Holbrook, these people are, put it to you like this, for the field of astronomy, and Dr. Gamble can agree, that it is about at least 50 of them with PhDs, and there's not enough of us to guide the ones upcoming. So we have to do the work for each other. So we have to do the peer-to-peer inspiration, the peer-to-peer mentoring, and so on and so forth. And so that is, I do have a list, at least, but it's not a big list, but yeah.
Thank you so much. So our next question is, what struggles have you experienced in the field and how did you overcome it? So
Well, when we say struggles, certainly when I came into naval aviation, it was, I don't like to use the word struggle. There were challenges ahead. And when I decided to go into naval aviation, I didn't even tell my parents I was going into flight training. The Navy had a reputation of being very conservative, and I had no idea what I was going to run into. But I found that for every body that would be unfair to me, there were 2 or 3 other people who would say, wait a minute, that's unfair. Let's do it right. So the struggles early on were some unfair treatment, but also being sure that I could have a preconceived expectation of being treated unfair. You with me? Yeah. Like other people, every place I went, I was pretty much the only Black pilot there. I was the only Black officer there in that unit. But I found out if I worked hard and I performed at a particular level, I got rewarded for that. And then the results are as we see. So one of the things we have to be sure we don't allow and impede us is our expectations and our perceptions of certain things. Now, back up a little bit. One big struggle that's obvious is when I started going into engineering, I was a music major. That was a struggle in and of itself. I was in college actually majoring in music when something hit me and I decided I'm going to pursue this engineering field. I was always a good math student. I was in accelerated math and English growing up through school. So I dove in and I started taking math classes, and lo and behold, I was doing well. I enjoyed them and so on. So that was a struggle in and of itself. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenges, and I overcame those challenges, and that's how it worked out.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Yeah. Dr. King?
Yeah, I mean, I think, being a minority in this particular field can be somewhat intimidating if you allow it to. And so I remember times, kind of thinking that I wasn't necessarily the brightest person. And so I just needed to sit back and listen. But over time, I think one of the ways that you overcome any of these challenges is just by trying true to yourself. The other thing is that it's just relaxing and being. And so I think it was in 2005, was when I first took a position down at the Central Intelligence Agency. And I was brought in to follow up a guy. I didn't know it at the time when I accepted the position, but he had just won the 2005 Scientist of the Year award at the agency for this program. And it's like, if I had known that prior to accepting the position, I probably would have said no, because there's no way to go from that. And so there were some people who were concerned when I came in to take over the program, and this guy was, very well known. He was well respected, and early on I was trying to do things the way that he did, and there were, the people that were part of the team, they were a little, some of them were really uncomfortable, right? Like, so where's he going and why are you here? And it was like, oh, and then later on I went to go ask the chief scientist, like, look, this guy's got all the juice out of the program. Why did you bring me here? I mean, just take it, write it down. He's like, no, absolutely not. I heard you the best there was at what you do, and so this is your opportunity to demonstrate. Now I went on to be highly successful after that particular point, but early on I had struggles because I was trying to do things the same way he did it. You go in meetings with technical people, and only thing he had to do was like hint that there might be something wrong, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, we need to check it, right? And I hint like you might be doing something wrong. And he's like, no, it's right. And he's like, I really think. He's like, no, it's right. Eventually say, look, it's wrong. here's the reason why. And so it's like, and so therefore I had to realize that I had to identify what particular approach would work for me, that I couldn't do the same things and do them the same way. I had to embrace the strengths and talents that I was blessed with and began to develop and leverage those. So, yeah.
Very well said. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hey. And for me, I'll say that I had some challenges along the way, not necessarily challenges associated with being a minority in this field, but just, I think, challenges that a lot of different people go through. When I went from undergrad to grad school, that was particularly challenging for me. I was one of those super geeky kids that really enjoyed math, really enjoyed science. High school didn't seem that difficult. There were some challenging classes in undergrad. I did get a D in chemistry. For those of you who are, I had to do that one twice to get an A the second time around. Thermo and me were not friends either, but for physics and statics and classes that were heavily built on the fundamental math, they just came fairly naturally. But when I went to grad school, that was a whole different ball of wax. And I found that in order to just feel like I was going to catch up to my peers who had gone to different schools around the country, I really needed to get study groups, like become very close friends with my professors and the advisors, and just use all of the resources I had in order to do well. And that worked out well for me. I was able to graduate with a very strong GPA at Georgia Tech and land a job at JPL. And at JPL, as a baby engineer, the thing that was the most challenging is I got hired right into the systems engineering arena. And because to be the most effective systems engineer, you kind of have to know about all of the different areas of a spacecraft in order to ask the right questions, to find things that are wrong, to figure out good options in order to adjust the design so things will work. That's challenging to do when you're learning how to spell spacecraft out of a mechanical engineering degree. And what I learned there is the importance of asking questions, asking them respectfully of people who are more senior than you are. Can you explain to me why this works? Can you explain to me how we're going to overcome this issue, so that in the midst of explaining, they'll say, wait a minute, how are we going to overcome that issue, as a good way to draw information out of people. Sometimes when different things happen to me, you can't tell whether they're because you are young and you have less experience, nobody wants to listen to you, whether you are a woman, and some people might have issues with that, whether you are a minority. And so my approach was just to not care about why things happen and try to figure out how to correct them and get around them to resolve technical issues. Katherine Johnson said something similar in an article that I read that was about her, where back in those days, there was some for real discrimination against people who were Black or women doing her job. And she would always decide internally not to worry about why someone did things that they did, but to think, maybe they had a rough night, maybe they skipped their coffee, whatever that is, let's go get this job done, which I think is a really nice mindset to not burden yourself with all of that stuff. And I also found that for me, having mentors has been very, very important. None of my mentors to date have really looked like me, except for my college controls professor. But I found that if I spotted people who were doing a job in a way that resonated with my own personal style, no matter what they look like, I was going to go after them to help mentor me so that I could become the best engineer that I could be too.
That was great. Thank you so much. Dr. Gamble?
Awesome. Okay, so I hope everybody has tissues because mine is a little bit more intense. In terms of obstacles, there were a bunch. I would say, even in high school, when I figured out that I decided I wanted to go into physics, I almost ended up in aerospace engineering because I didn't know that you could actually major in physics in high school until I figured that out. So it's a good thing I figured that out because I love physics. Anyways, so my guidance counselor in high school wanted me to change my major to engineering and she was a Black woman, and she said that, well, it'll be easier for you to graduate in engineering. And I told her, but I wanted to do physics because it's hard and because no one else is doing it. And so she's like, well, that's going to be very difficult. And, there's not a lot of support in physics, as I should say. And she changed this is senior year, high school. She changed what my projected major was going to be like in the yearbook. And I told her, no, change it back to physics. It was engineering. And I said, change it back to physics because that's what I want to do. And she said, okay, good luck. I'm like, cool. And so into college, I had other professors. I've had a professor tell me, again, to change my major because I was very, very good in math and science, especially calculus, but I was a terrible test taker. So yeah, I blame my ADHD, I guess. So because I wasn't the best test taker in his class, an undisclosed professor, he again told me change my major to something easier. And I said, well, no, I'm just going to retake the course. And so I did, got a better grade. I moved on, and it's one thing after another. And this isn't just, these aren't just instances of a color disparity or something else or racial or ethnic. Some of these people are our own people discouraging me. Sometimes it's our own people. And there are other instances at either national conferences where I'm presenting work, where people have found they've looked up North Carolina A&T State University, figured out he was an HBCU, and I'm at this national conference, the American Physical Society, presenting work, trying to win an award for my poster presentation, and they're coming from Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, schools that are 1,000 times larger than A&T in terms of physics, and just saying things like, oh, well, maybe you should have gone to a wider known school, or, when you graduate, you do know and I've heard, and I'm quoting this verbatim, someone has told me that because my degree came from an HBCU in physics, it doesn't count. And so those are the obstacles I've had to overcome. Most recently, when I got hired at NASA, I'm also faculty at UMD College Park. Somebody found my personal website, they found my resume, my CV, they found all the papers I had published, and they started attacking me saying, well, they should have hired someone else, someone more deserving other than this underrepresented minority. And I know that was filtered text. So these are real struggles, right? That if I didn't have the amount of tenacity that I grew up with, I would have been out of the field. I would have done something else. I would have maybe gone into painting. I'm also an artist, so maybe I would have done painting. But I wouldn't be a theoretical astrophysicist at NASA Goddard, which was the goal. That was the dream job check. So I'm here. So in terms of obstacles, I know they're going to continue to come, but I also know I know they're not going to hold me back, you know. And at the same time, you know, you have to let your haters be your motivators, I like to say. So if there's somebody hating on you out there, if somebody's just dislikes you just because you're color and you're in astrophysics, then you're doing something right. Just keep going. Eventually, at some point, I am going to win a Nobel Prize. You guys heard it right now. I'm winning it at some point in my career. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's going to happen. So but this is what I am constantly telling myself to try to, you know, drown out all the other obstacles, all the other voices that are telling me that I can't do this.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was. Ms. Walker.
I didn't know we were going to take this shift to the serious route, but since we're already here, so I'm going to keep it here. I'm going to keep the energy the same. So my struggles were very similar to Dr. Gamble and Ms. Drain. So for starters, I am a non-traditional student. And so I was in junior college for a little bit longer than I should have. I'm not going to disclose that, but I was in junior college a little bit longer. I did end up transferring to my now alma mater. When I first got there, my father was diagnosed with cancer. It was my first year. Professors knew I was a bit struggling because I was trying to be the caretaker for my father. Well, both of them, I had two sick parents at the time. So I was trying to care for my father and making sure my mother went to her appointments and did all the things that she needed to do. About summer of 20, let me back up. My first advisor left the institution due to the Illinois state budget. So I had no advisor. That was fun. And this is the person that got me in astronomy. So that was the fun part, right? And if the kicker keeps going, right? If we keep going, in August of 2016, my father passed away of lung cancer. December of 2016, I was mistakenly declared deceased by the U.S. government, which threw everything all the way off. So I had a GoFundMe page. I had all of these things happening at once. And, but in hindsight 2020, I had someone supporting me the whole entire time, which I ended up getting an offer to go to Harvard for the summer. So even though I was struggling, I was failing my classes, my GPA was not the greatest, but I still had an offer to go to an R1 institution. I was going to an Ivy League. And it was a really rough time. However, I ended up getting temporarily in this one group where the advisor was really, really shady. And it goes piggybacking to what Ron was saying about sometimes to be your own people. And it wasn't the best situation, so I got up out of that one. Fast forward, I did what I could at Harvard. And to this day, those two women are my biggest supporters. I ended up getting another internship at Johns Hopkins because the advisor, Johns Hopkins, knew the one at Harvard because they went to undergrad together. And the one at Johns Hopkins was making sure I was okay. So I ended up having another one set for that summer. The summer went well, but when it came to the support, it was not there when I came back to Chicago. I was still in the group, still doing research. The support was not there. So it didn't work out. I was getting ready to by this time, I was getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's in chemistry. Throughout the whole duration of the time, I had switched to another advisor who felt like I should have been a physicist. If I wanted to be in astrophysics, no offense, Ron, I would have got a degree in physics, not chemistry. And so from that point, I did not get into grad school the first round. I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, I was freaking out. It was all these things, and I have all these connections, right? And I was sitting on these connections and I was just crying and everything else. But then I called my mentor, I told her what happened. And like Ms. Dran said, you gotta find your mentors that is directly with you and what you're gonna do and take you where you're gonna go. And that is what my mentor did. Not only did she tell me to apply to a postbac, which postbacs are available options if you don't get into grad school or you feel like you're not ready for grad school. I got in a postbac internship at NASA. Then I reapplied, but when I reapplied this time, Black and Astro had kicked off. So now the same people, it was like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I can't do this, do this. Oh my God, we're so proud of you. Now it was a whole different story. Now, at this point, I ended up getting into grad school. I got into a couple grad institutions. But one grad institution in particular was gaslighting me the entire time, and I did not want to be there. So I chose an HBCU. And I can say my HBCU experience has been different because it's just me in the incoming class. But I am having a cohort this upcoming August, which I'm really proud of and excited about. And don't let your obstacles take you down. I am very hard-headed. So if as the saying goes, if first you don't succeed, try again. I failed many classes. I can't tell you how many classes I failed, but I'm passionate about space and about science. And so, again, don't let these obstacles get to you.
That's great advice. Our last question.
So what's one piece of advice that you would give young Black students who are just getting started in STEM?
The advice I would give to young Black students is some things that have already been said. First of all, collaborate or find people who are interested in STEM as you are, find mentors and work with those mentors, and always be aware that your mentor doesn't have to look like you. You know, this is, again, we're Blacks in STEM, but anybody can mentor anybody. Yeah, I would urge young people to do what we see here. This is a very diverse audience right here in this room, which is really good. So I would urge young people, don't isolate yourself to people that just look like you. You know, we live in an international community these days, and people just don't do it. Be open to everybody. Also, I go on with a couple other things. We talked about obstacles just now. Somebody said it. Don't let your obstacles stop you. You know, we as Black people tend to think of obstacles that have to do a race. You know, that's kind of inbred in us, but everybody has obstacles. I don't care who you are. You know, white people have obstacles. You know, obstacles may be financial, they may be family, they may be medical, they may be political, they may be so. We all have obstacles, and like somebody just said, I think it was Dr. Walker, you know, you don't let the obstacles take you down, you tackle them, you overcome them. So for young people interested in STEM, go for it. Don't let anybody turn you around. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. When I showed up at graduate school at U.S. Naval Postgraduate School with a music degree, and I was going to study engineering, and so there's more to the story that I'm telling you because I don't want to take a lot of time. Some of the professors said, "Why are you going to study engineering? What are you going to do here? Rah." But you know, I let that go in one ear and out of the other, and I gravitated towards the professors who were there to help me. And most people, when they found out my interest and my perseverance, they rallied. They tutored me. I camped out in front of my thermodynamics professor's office 5 days a week. When he showed up, I was camped out there waiting on him, getting extra help. So I'm going on. But my point is, everybody has obstacles. Everybody can overcome those obstacles if you don't give up, like I think Dr. Walker said.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things. Embrace the challenge. You know, you are the person who kind of knows your abilities more than anyone else. Had I listened to some of the folks, the guidance counselors when I was in high school, I wouldn't be sitting here. Yeah, I was actually told, that I wouldn't make it through one semester of an engineering program. And I guess in some ways they're right. I made it through 11 years. And so the other thing that I would say for the second thing is maintain an entrepreneurial spirit. You don't necessarily have to go to school to learn how to work with someone else. I'm learning more and more that this country in particular is really set up to for those who are creative and innovative and want to pursue those entrepreneurial dreams. And so you should embrace that. Third thing is, you don't necessarily. I get letters from all over the world, emails from all over the world of folks who want to study in my laboratory. I don't know if somebody told me that I pay for all my students. I support them all. But I'm amazed at the number of students that are here that don't necessarily recognize that you don't necessarily have to pay for a master's or PhD if you're good, especially in the STEM field in engineering, computer science. Their professors have research dollars, and they'll take care of the tuition as well as give you some living change to have to feed yourself and get books or whatever else you want. But I mean, it's decent money for a study. So you don't, if you're in a STEM field, don't feel like you got to pay for everything out of pocket. And yeah, it's just that belief in yourself, and just like you were saying, that your mentors, don't necessarily have to look like you. Some of my biggest supporters, they took risks. They were at levels that I wanted to be, and to be quite honest, at those levels there weren't many of us, right? And so, chances are you're going to have somebody who's not African American, who's going to be the one to reach down and try and bring you up. They're going to have to take that risk, and once they do it, I mean, you have to show yourself that you just do the best you can. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just be yourself and do the best you can. Maximize your own abilities that you've been given. You'll be fine. You don't necessarily need to worry about all this.
And for me, what I tell, especially students in STEM, but really students in anything going to college, is we can all get a little bit caught up in needing to get a GPA, right? You want to get your A, you want to get your B. And so you pay attention to those things. You think you're going to be on the test. You get to the end of the semester, you hit delete on your brain to make room for other stuff. And you're really just going through the motions, trying to get your A. And the thing that I really wish someone had said to me, though I don't know how I would have built it into what I was doing for school, because it just takes time, is you get the most out of your education when you learn why things work the way they do. Why does that equation work? Why does that law work? What is the fundamental physics behind thermal? Because when you're out in the real world and you're trying to build things, or you're trying to come up with new theories, you can't flip to the back of the book or come up with an example that was just like the one you did, because people don't know that stuff. You can't ask your boss what the answer is. And so you need to deeply, fundamentally understand those engineering and scientific principles so that you can use them to go at and attack new problems that nobody knows how to solve. And that's harder. It takes more time to study that way than to just try to memorize formulas and turn the crank on examples that are just like the ones that you learned. But I really wish that more students work that way, and that more schools made it their purpose to teach that way, teach kids to learn how to learn how to think. I also wish someone had told me, so I'm telling younger people out there, don't panic about getting the right job right out of school. It kind of annoys me that my own personal story is so linear. I went to school and I did this and I got hired at JPL. I've been there 20 years, blah, blah, because that's not the way the world usually works. And that's not the way it works for most people. It is okay to not start off on your dream job, to start somewhere else and have to take a couple of left turns before you end up someplace, especially for those of you in school today. The kind of job that you might love might not even exist right now. And so the types of things that you get to do along the way will be learning opportunities as you're growing into wherever it is that you might land. So please don't feel like you have to choose right the first time. And then once you get to your first job, don't stress out about how do I excel? How do I prove that I'm a great person here? Like, we put all this extra stress on us when wherever you get hired, they know you just got out of school. They know you know some things, but they're going to have to teach you a bunch of things. So relax into that and learn and connect with people and do your best to enjoy the time you have in the beginning of your career. Don't think so much about, I have to get here, I have to get this, I have to climb the leadership chain. Like, enjoy the journey, because that's what life is all about.
Dr. Gamble?
Awesome. Yeah, so I would kind of piggyback on that and say that there are things that so there are either jobs, like Ms. Drain said, or positions or things that you would do that are kind of lateral to what you really want to do. An example of that is, so in my experience, I actually taught. I had a post coming right out of grad school. I didn't get the postdocs that I applied to. Thanks, NASA, but I'm here now. But I did get a postdoc. It was still at my home institution at A&T, but I was in the bioengineering department. And my sole job there was to design new classes for them that was geared towards numerical calculus and biophysics. So I designed 4 or 5 classes for them and taught them, thinking, all right, well, this is just a job. At some point, this is, maybe it'll pay off. Okay, I'm mentoring students. Yay, they're passing my class and they're not failing it. But okay, I need to get back to astrophysics. The next postdoc was not in astrophysics. I was actually at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency in nuclear weapons effects. So I was in the DoD, which is one place that I told myself I did not want to go to. And I was in the basic research program office. Again, I thought, okay, this is just another job to pay the bills. I'm still waiting on to start my career, per se. And in my NASA interview, they are referencing both of those positions. And they're saying, well, we like what you did in those positions, and we think those skill sets can directly transfer over. So can you tell us more about what you did? I'm thinking, did you read my dissertation? Did you does that not come up? And they're like, well, we did, but we want to know how did you get from bioengineering to nuclear weapons effect to us? I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's a common thread there, and I explained it. And so they love that. So don't let little side veers or missteps, if you will, or detours, delay your forthcoming to your dream job. And so if you work hard enough, you will get it at the very right time. If I apply to the position that I have now, when I wanted it 5 years ago, I wouldn't have gotten it. But now that I took time, I worked on myself, I worked in other areas to get other experience. I've been in academia, government, and private now. So all 3 sectors. And that's all of it is working for its good at my NASA position right now. And lastly, I would say, and I tell my students, so I've been mentoring students for about 9 years now. I just had one call me today. He's panicking about graduation. I'm like, you're graduating. He's figured it out. But I would tell my students that, your battle scars are your best storytellers. Your battle scars are your best storytellers, because those are the reminders that you survived whatever it was. Those are the reminders that you overcame whatever it was. Those are the reminders that, yeah, you may not have gotten the A that you wanted in Calculus 2, or your differential equations class, or thermo, that everybody seems to hate. I got an A in thermo, I liked it. But anyways, you've overcome it, you've gotten past it, you're on the next step. Don't let your undergrad experience ruin your graduate experience. A lot of people may not realize, and they don't believe me when I say this, but I graduated undergrad with a 2.7 GPA. My GPA was 2.7. And that's really me rounding. So it was 2.7. Was I ready for an R1 research experience in grad school? No. Did I work towards it? Yeah. Am I kind of at the top of my field right now, I should say? Kind of. And so I would say, don't let your obstacles, don't let anything you're experiencing right now Today ruin your tomorrow. And I know I'm throwing in a whole bunch of one-liners, but take them. And I'm sure Dr. Walker is going to have some more in that. And yes, I'm using Dr. Walker because she's getting her PhD. Speak it into existence.
Oh, now y'all done kick my head up now. Why y'all do that? I will say, and don't panic. Please don't. I'm learning that as a grad student. Do not panic and be easy on yourself. No one is going to be harder on yourself than you. No matter, you'll hear things and they'll stay with you. When I was an undergrad, I'd hear all type of stuff. Like how I didn't know stuff, or couldn't remember stuff, or why don't she know this, and why did she get so terrible on this exam, and all these different things. But ultimately, what matters is how passionate I was about everything that I'm doing. And currently, I have 2 advisors who are extremely supportive, and they understand of how passionate I am. Like Dr. Gamble, I also graduated rounding to a 2.7. And yet you hear the list of places that I went, right? So that should tell you an indicator about GPAs. And that's another conversation for tomorrow or whenever, right? But don't be so hard on yourself. Take good care of yourself. Surround yourself with people that care about your future. And also, last but not least, take care of each other.
So we ran a little bit over, but I just want to thank our speaker. I want to thank our speakers for coming and speaking today. This was a beautiful Q&A. Thank you so much. That's it. We're
Do
done.
you not have time for audience questions?
If y'all are willing to stay, then we can do audience questions. If our speakers willing to stay, you want to speak?
We have plenty of time.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. So if y'all want to ask questions, if someone has any questions for our speakers, feel free to raise your hand.
Wonderful that I know her personally because she's great person, great scientist, just staying out there. Very effective. But I just want to do one question out there. I was just at an event about diversity, and this question come up about how in schools, especially in schools with more minorities, we don't have the access to like engineering camps, coding camps, stuff like that, because we don't have the financial stability for that, or there's just not offered to us. I grew up, I'm Hispanic, I'm Colombian. I never knew about coding, and I felt like in my high school that wasn't representing enough because my high school was minority-based. So I'm wondering, like, what's the best way to like kind of push that more towards like more minority-based high school, like push them to go to STEM because a lot of us don't have them until it's too late, and we're kind of learning Spanish. So just kind of put that out there and see. about that from professionals.
Would you mind standing up?
Oh, yeah.
Come a little bit closer.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry.
I'll have to trouble.
Because they can hear you as well. Right there, yes.
Okay, so I asked like, how can we improve basically the outreach to more minority-based high schools? Because I experienced and I heard a lot of experiences that we don't have a lot of outreach to coding camps, engineering camps, astronomy camps. We kind of have to like look that for ourselves, and I believe that it would be better if we have that accessibility, so more of us can join this beautiful field.
Yeah, I'd say one thing I can offer that I recently ran into myself, there's this really fantastic organization called Dream Wakers, all one word, Dream Wakers, like waking up. And they have a really simple way of putting a lot of different kinds of speakers. They have a very diverse lineup of folks remotely in classes for talks like this, because in thinking about how to get more minority students interested in science and STEM, I think we just have to find ways to expose them to it and to get people in front of them who are doing that kind of work and can talk about why it's exciting, why we're passionate about it, what we love about it, so that they're not just exposed to it in like science fiction the way that I was. And now that we've been in this COVID world for so long and we're getting better at doing virtual and hybrid events like this one, I think it makes it easier for students across the country to get at least plugged in at a tiny level with folks like that. That's at least something that I'd offer. Dreamwakers.org. It's nice.
I can also offer, there's a couple different places. Obviously, I'm going to highlight the Black and X movement, which hosts over 80 different organizations for different types of Black and also the Black and X movement with different organizations. Also, I'm going to highlight Skype a Scientist. So it looks exactly like this when you do Skype a Scientist, and they range from preschool, I believe, all the way to adults. And they've been going a few years strong. And then there's also pre-letters to a scientist. So basically having a pen pal as a scientist. And from what I've heard, it works. I've been wanting to get active in it, but I've just been a little bit too busy. But those are some of the ones that I've heard. And I can also send an email to you all if you all need it.
I would say that I guess the students just need to, throw a shot in the dark. So, and what I mean by that is, just like the Skype of Scientists, which I've heard of as well. But just, if you know of a science center or some center or an institution that is STEM focused, like NASA, for example, then, have your student directly reach out to whoever it is at a NASA Goddard, a Langley, a JPL, a university, and just ask questions. So for example, I am currently talking to a few middle school students right now who have just sent out a cold email, a shot in the dark, to somebody who's willing to answer at NASA Goddard. And I'm always open to answer these types of questions, but they just want to know, okay, well, what is it like? What do you do on a daily basis? What does a theoretical physicist do on a daily basis? Are we doing things on the chalkboard all the time? Not exactly, but, are we talking to people? Are we communicating the science? Are we writing articles? Are we doing video panels? Are we going to conferences? Are we going to schools and talking? And that really just helps build the passion within the student to get them interested and encouraged to have a focus in STEM. They have to be comfortable in doing the science, even if their friends aren't doing the science. And so I think something we all on the panel had in common. My friends certainly weren't doing what I was doing. One of them's a social worker, the other one's in engineering, and I have another one, he's completely outside of the sciences altogether. But I mean, they have to learn how to, if they're passionate about the science, go after it. They have to learn how to just go after it. And then again, pair up with others, other people that inspire them, other people that they've seen in the field, other people that they see either on video calls, on TV or something. Try to reach out to somebody and just ask questions. Somebody's going to answer your question at some point if you keep asking questions. And then that will spark the fire within some of your students.
So I would also say that years ago I was at a conference. Thank you for reading Black Choice. But he was the speaker there, and afterwards there was a conversation between the few of us. I was just a graduate student at the time, and boy, those guys were laying it on thick. And what they were talking about was, people like you and I, we grew up in, or at least I grew up in like the rural area. And one of the guys made the point that, one of the problems with the African-American community is that, Mike, he's the problem. It's like, he's talking about. It's like, well, you can't go home. It's like, what do you mean I can't go home? I can go home anytime I want. It took me years to really process what he was actually saying. And what he was saying was that a community that worked so hard to produce one Mike King would never actually receive the full benefit of a Mike King, because once I got out of that area, that was what I was working towards, right? Being able to assimilate in other groups and get a bigger house and live in a nicer neighborhood. And he said, he's going to be a ghost and be back home for like a week at most. And it's like, and some years after I began to process all the things he was saying. He was right. He's like, I've only been home for a few days at a time. I've been consumed in work. And so if we're going to change those things, there are people that are working to change those things. I think, when I look at the work of a Dr. Calvin Mackey, he was one of the people involved in that conversation. If you're not familiar with STEM NOLA, I would recommend that you he does STEM outreach programs every Saturday in the New Orleans community. I would recommend that you take a look at some of the work that he's doing. And then the other thing I would say is that if you're really going to change those things, you're likely that prime candidate to change it. And beyond that, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, YouTube, the internet has really revolutionized learning today. My son would go up and watch TV and watch YouTube, watch something about space, and then all of a sudden come downstairs and he's the brightest dude around the table, right? Having a conversation about, hey, Dad, did you know about this? Like, well, absolutely, I didn't. You didn't know about it either for 5 minutes ago. There are an abundance of resources that are out there now. So it's not one of those things of it's not possible. I mean, I think that's the first thing, is instilling people that it is possible, showing them the example of how it can be done, but actually, trying to do more in terms of being present.
You have a cat?
Somebody has a cat.
He decided he wanted to show his face and keep telling me that he's hungry, which I know that already.
Anyone have any other questions?
Oh, there was a question in the chat. I meant to hit type answer, but I accidentally hit answer live. Can we talk about that one? Here, I'll read it real quick. It's from Andrew Palmer, who said, as a faculty member who teaches and runs a research lab, I found it's easier to mentor and support the individual through direct interactions in the lab. How do we as teachers do a better job in the classroom? What are some simple steps we could take to get started? GPAs simply don't tell the whole story. And the thing that reminded me of, not a teacher, but I was at a talk that was given by a professor at a college once, and it was a lecture he was giving to other professors about how to have more engagement in the classroom. And I just kind of snuck in there because I was curious about the topic. And a couple of the things he said that really stuck with me is he would hand out little 3x5 cards to the students in the class at the beginning of every class. And he would tell them to write down things like listen to as you go through the lecture, listen to something that you found confusing, that you didn't understand. or write down something you found confusing, write down an example that you thought was really helpful for you, and write down something that you learned that was surprising. And he used those as feedback to guide what he was doing later in classes. But the primary point was to focus them in because they were thinking about those things and paying more attention as he was going through the lecture. So it was a good real-time thing. And also after the fact thing where they felt like they can give him some specific feedback. And then as he worked those in, like adjusted things that he did later, they felt like they had some interaction in the class. I think he did some things to make them have more real-time interaction too, but that's the thing that most stuck out for me. That would have been kind of amazing for me if I'd had professors do that.
Yeah, I went to a teaching college, and so because I went to a teaching college, they started doing like the curriculum entirely different. So, and because it was smaller, it's smaller. So like for example, if I had issues, they know I'm coming to their office. So I'm coming in there like I would any research office, any lab. Look, I can't figure this out. What's going on, right? But in terms of sorry, Pepper, but in terms of like what you can do. So yeah, we had group packets that we used to get. So instead of getting like the regular lecture, they will make us do group activities. And so they start getting rid of actual exams and start giving us these things called masteries. And so we would have these things called masteries where if you get like a certain level right or done, that would determine your grade. So, and this happened maybe the second to last year I was there. So, and also they like, you can't, so when you do the mastery, if you get anything wrong, she gives it back to you. The professor gives it back to you for you to go study it. You can study it with your friends and then come back. You may or may not get the same mastery. If you get the same mastery, you're lucky. If you don't, well, you already know. So, again, we would have these group activities where we had homework, but we really didn't, because we would have the group activities and we would work on everything together. And so it would help the professor interact with us a lot more than, and we'll interact with each other a lot more than the traditional sit at the whiteboard, watch the marker go back and forth. And so it's actually working for them. It really is, because it helped me end up passing a lot of my classes.
So I taught for 7 years as a faculty. I taught for 7 years at A&T in academia. I know I look young, but I've done a lot. And I would say that in my classes, I would, if I noticed a particular student or a group of students, I should say, needed a little push or needed some extra mentoring, and as faculty members, you're already pressed for time. Your schedule is already booked up throughout the semester. So, but I found that it is both effective in the mentoring and the teaching of the student, and your time as a faculty member to allow the student the opportunity during lecture to teach part of the lecture, and to allow them to fail in teaching part of the lecture because they didn't read or finish the homeworks or whatever it was, or they just didn't quite understand, or they're just not faculty members themselves. But it allows them the opportunity. You get live kind of one-on-one feedback right there, right during lecture. And it doesn't have to be a full lecture. Sometimes I would allow my students to just lecture on a very specific subject that we were covering that day. And I say, okay, well, give us, what is the definition of, what does Newton mean by, he's comparing mass and acceleration? Or, what did Einstein say about special relativity? Just by definition, teach us. And I could see the student kind of work in their heads like, okay, well, if I write this, then, well, no, close your textbook. Don't use equations. Tell me in words, lecture to the class. Give us a definition of this concept. And it would be challenging for them. And then they would really be attached now to trying to figure out this answer because they couldn't do it during class. And now they want to come back to my office hours and say, well, I figured it out. I said, that's great. Use it on the exam. And so that is what I found. You know, if you want to try to find methods of mentorship outside of the lab, right, outside of research and into the classroom, I found that is a very effective tool to use. Having your students teach part of the lecture for a minute or two, just to get them in front of their peers and put the pressure on them to teach to their peers now what you are supposed to be teaching them. And so they can be in that moment and say, all right, yes, this is hard, but I respect you more because you're doing this. And now they understand the difficulty that's involved in giving a lecture and presenting it in a way that these students who are coming in completely disregarding the notes and everything else and not, you know, they don't know quantum and things like that. Now they know, now they have a deeper understanding for both the content within the class syllabus and you yourself as the instructor. They've paired it together because they're in your position and they're teaching the content that you're supposed to be doing. It's kind of emulating your job in a sense. They have a greater appreciation after, you know, they bomb that lecture. and so it's always worked. I've been doing that for the 7 years that I was teaching at A&T. It worked every single time. And after that, you know, the class average increased because they had an opportunity to teach their peers and to try to learn it more intuitively. And so that's my advice for that.
So unfortunately, we actually apparently have to wrap it up around 6:30.
Okay.
So, but you know, I'm sure that outside of this panel, we can go around and talk and hang out outside. So thank you so much for coming to this panel. This has been a great time. Thank you so much to the speakers for coming out and for staying an extra 30 minutes afterwards. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you.